I wake to the soft hum of the city outside, but inside, the silence is heavier. Victoria's heels click in the hallway as she descends for breakfast, carrying that look of quiet satisfaction that has become second nature to her. "Morning," she says, her tone airy, almost dismissive. I nod, keeping my voice low. "Morning." I watch her arrange the table as if orchestrating a performance, glances flicking toward me, testing my reaction. I've learned long ago not to rise to the bait. "You forgot the sugar again," she remarks, her words light, but the edge in them is deliberate. I smile faintly, hiding the irritation that tightens my chest. "I'll get it," I say, moving to the cabinet. Her eyes follow me, calculating, almost predatory. I let her think she's winning. Daniel calls later, the only person who ever reads the quiet storm beneath my calm. "You okay?" he asks over the line, voice warm, concerned. "I saw her at the meeting today. That glare, she's testing you." I chuckle softly, but it isn't humor. "Testing, yes. But I'm always prepared, Daniel. I just wait." "Prepared?" His skepticism is audible. "It looks like you're letting her walk over you." I let her walk, I admit, deliberately slow. Because I'm learning. Observing. Patience, Daniel. The moment I act, it must be perfect. At lunch, Victoria's smile is sharp, polite to everyone else, but when she catches my eye, it flickers with something else. Pride. Arrogance. I maintain my meek posture, the one everyone else sees, soft-spoken, almost hesitant. She doesn't know that beneath the surface, I'm calculating. I've endured subtle humiliations for years, the laughter at my small mistakes, the sighs when I suggest an idea, the way she corrects me in front of others as if I were incapable of independent thought. Later, she leans close as I pour tea. "Do you think that idea of yours will work?" she asks, voice silky, almost teasing. I glance at her, calm, controlled. "Possibly," I reply, letting my uncertainty appear genuine. She smirks, satisfied. "Well, I suppose we'll see. But you know, I wouldn't count on it." I feel a spark, brief but electric, irritation, yes, but more importantly, focus. That is exactly what I want them to see, weakness, uncertainty. They are blind to the fact that every word, every small reaction, is a carefully planted deception. Daniel stops by that afternoon. "You're unusually quiet," he observes. I shrug, casual. "Just reading. Thinking." "You're hiding something," he insists, leaning against the doorway. His eyes are sharp, reading beneath the surface. "I've seen the way she looks at you, the way she assumes. You could crush this without anyone noticing. Why don't you?" I smile, faint, almost imperceptible. "Because timing, my friend. One misstep, and it all collapses. Patience is more powerful than immediate action. I've learned that over years of careful observation." Victoria emerges from the study, her presence commanding the room without effort. "Are you coming, or will you sit there daydreaming again?" Her voice is sharp but casual, habitual. I stand, nod politely, and follow. She leads the conversation, as always, subtly reminding me of the hierarchy she believes exists. I laugh lightly at her anecdote, keeping my tone deferential, even when her facts are skewed or her assumptions laughable. Everyone else laughs. She glances at me, satisfied, thinking I'm compliant. But inside, my mind is already planning. Small cracks have begun to appear in her armor, unnoticed by anyone else. A dismissive remark here, a subtle overconfidence there. I catalog everything, mentally noting weaknesses to exploit in due course. I wonder when she will realize that her so-called power is an illusion, and that the quiet, unassuming man she dismisses has been watching, waiting, learning. At night, after Victoria retreats to her novels and the city quiets itself, I sit by my desk, pen in hand. I write, not merely for reflection but for strategy. Every smile, every correction, every little superiority complex, it's all documented, I murmur softly, words to myself but also a mantra. I am building, patiently, the architecture of control no one suspects I possess. The clock ticks on. I sip my tea, watching the amber liquid swirl. Victoria believes she owns this household, this life. Daniel believes I am merely biding time. But I know better. And soon, very soon, the careful illusion I've maintained for years will become the stage for a revelation that no one will see coming. I tilt my head, a faint smile curling at the corners of my lips. Patience is my weapon. Observation is my shield. And the day I reveal what has lain hidden for so long, she will fall. I noticed it first during the board meeting, though it wasn't dramatic, just a subtle shift in the air. Victoria leaned against the table, her eyes glinting as she examined Adrian, who smiled back like a practiced actor. I'm not sure your idea fits the budget, darling, she said lightly, but the emphasis was sharp, almost theatrical. I caught the smirk that played on Adrian's lips, the one that said he understood every nuance of her amusement. I kept my voice low, measured. We can adjust the projections. It might require reallocation, but it's feasible. Victoria tilted her head, the picture of politeness masking condescension. Feasible, yes. But do you really think everyone else will see it as practical? Her glance swept the room, and I felt that familiar prick of humiliation, the one I had learned to swallow quietly. Later, in the cafe where we often met after meetings, I met Daniel. He leaned back, watching me stir my coffee. I saw how she looked at Adrian today, he said softly. There's more going on than just playful teasing. She's planting seeds, testing reactions. And you, as always, take the bait silently. I'm observing, I replied, calm. There's no need to act yet. Every move has value. Observing, yes, he said, eyes sharp. But don't let patience turn into passivity. Every glance, every laugh, it's all data. You need to document, remember, and plan. Their arrogance will become their weakness. I nodded. That was exactly what I had begun doing, mentally cataloging every slight, every overreach. Victoria's arrogance had grown in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Her dismissive remarks, her private smiles when I faltered, her insinuations in social settings, they were all notes in the ledger I was keeping. And Adrian, his charm was dangerous, but his confidence made him careless. The next evening, at a small dinner with mutual friends, Victoria's manipulation surfaced again. She leaned toward Adrian, laughing at his stories more openly than necessary. You always have the most interesting ideas, she said, voice honeyed but sharp-edged. I smiled faintly, inwardly noting the performance. I couldn't resist a small, pointed question. And what about the rest of us? Don't our ideas count? Her smile flickered, almost imperceptibly, then widened. Of course, darling. But some ideas simply shine brighter. The words were casual, but the implication hit like a subtle jab. Adrian chuckled, knowingly, as if this were a game we hadn't been invited to play. I let it slide, quiet, watching, waiting. Later, Maya pulled me aside, her tone hesitant. I'm not sure you realize what's happening, she murmured, glancing around. Victoria, she's not as harmless as she seems. Adrian isn't just charming, he's taking advantage. And she encourages it. I tilted my head, curious but measured. Are you saying they're conspiring? Maya hesitated. Not exactly conspiring, yet. But they both act in self-interest. Sometimes it's subtle, smiles, gestures, comments. They assume you're too slow to notice. But I see it. I've seen it for months. I absorbed her words carefully. And why tell me this? Because. I don't like being on the sidelines when people manipulate without consequence, she said, voice low. You're the only one who seems aware. You have patience. You might be able to counter it before it's too late. That struck a chord. Patience had always been my shield and weapon, but hearing it recognized made the strategy feel tangible. I nodded. I'll keep watching. Every move has meaning. They will reveal themselves through their arrogance. Back at the office, I quietly documented the interactions I had observed: Victoria's dismissive laughter at my emails, Adrian's calculated compliments, the subtle competitions in social circles. I noticed patterns. I saw opportunities. Every misstep by them was a step closer to exposure, but only if I remained unseen, underestimated, patient. During another board discussion, Victoria leaned toward Adrian again, voice low but audible to those near. "I think he's overly cautious, don't you?" she said, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Adrian smiled, charm in every gesture. "Yes, but caution has its merits. Not everyone can improvise under pressure like I can." I said nothing, pretending the remark didn't sting. I took mental notes instead, logging their behavior with precision. Each overconfidence, each subtle slight, each gloating glance, perfect data for the time when the masks fell and the truth emerged. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me, observe, wait, and let them act recklessly. Every mistake is a gift. I understood the value of this philosophy more keenly with each passing day. The key wasn't confrontation yet. It was endurance, awareness, and strategic planning. Victoria believed she controlled the narrative, Adrian believed he was untouchable. Both assumed I was passive, weak, and incapable. But beneath the calm, quiet exterior, I was preparing. Each smile I endured, every subtle humiliation I absorbed, strengthened the architecture of the plan forming in my mind. I would not strike hastily, nor recklessly. Their arrogance would be their undoing, and when the moment came, the revelation would be complete, and utterly devastating. And through it all, Maya would remain a careful ally, someone who understood both the danger and the necessity of patience. I let the thought settle, sipping my tea as the evening deepened. Soon, I whispered to myself, they will see. They will all see. The event hall buzzed with polite chatter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of ambition. I kept my gaze steady, hands folded in front of me, pretending to be nothing more than the quiet husband everyone assumed I was. But I felt it, Victoria's presence, like a blade, slicing through my composure before the evening had even begun. She approached me first, smile tight, eyes sharp. "I told Adrian about your latest report," she said lightly, glancing toward him. He seemed impressed. I nodded politely, hiding the flicker of irritation. "I'm glad he appreciates the effort." Her laugh, soft and deliberate, carried just enough ridicule to make me flinch inwardly. "Oh, I'm sure he does," she said, brushing past me like I were furniture. Later, when the crowd gathered around the stage for announcements, Victoria made her move. She leaned close to Adrian, voice low but audible. "He really struggles to keep up with the pace, doesn't he?" Adrian's chuckle was insufferable. "Yes, but I suppose someone has to handle the groundwork." His words dripped with patronizing amusement. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the familiar sting of humiliation. My colleagues' eyes flicked between us, some sympathetic, some curious, none understanding the tension bubbling beneath my calm exterior. I clenched my fists beneath the table, fighting the urge to explode. Daniel leaned toward me, whispering, "Control it. Breathe." "But I see it, you've changed. The quiet acceptance is gone. That anger, it's sharp now." I exhaled slowly. "I'm not angry at them," I murmured, though every fiber of me burned. "I'm aware. And awareness is power." Victoria sauntered over again, this time with a hand lightly touching Adrian's arm, guiding him as if he were a prize she had claimed. "You look tense, darling," she said with that saccharine inflection. "Everything all right?" "Fine," I replied evenly, masking the storm inside. "Everything's perfectly fine." Her gaze lingered, searching for a crack, and I deliberately offered none. Inside, though, the decision solidified. No longer would I allow her or anyone to underestimate me. Not now. Not ever. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception area. Victoria and Adrian hovered at the center of attention, laughing, exchanging compliments that weren't meant for me, flaunting their closeness as if the world were watching solely for their amusement. I caught Daniel's eye across the room. His expression was a mixture of concern and approval. He approached, voice low. You felt it, haven't you? The tipping point. Yes, I admitted, though my jaw tightened. It's more than humiliation. It's clarity. I see their arrogance, their dependence on my supposed meekness. Every gesture, every word, they think they're untouchable. Daniel nodded. Good. Let them think they control the narrative. Let them think you're submissive. But you've crossed the line in your mind. That's the start. I moved quietly to the balcony, seeking solitude. The city lights stretched below, indifferent and distant. I pressed my palms to the railing, feeling the tension in my muscles, the thrum of determination in my chest. Every slight, every public jab, every whispered mockery had accumulated. I would not react impulsively, but I would act strategically. My thoughts raced. Victoria's reliance on charm and dominance, Adrian's overconfidence, the casual arrogance of people around us, they were patterns. Predictable patterns. And patterns could be exploited. I started mentally mapping the steps, calculating possibilities, noting where their pride might make them falter. Daniel's earlier words echoed. Every misstep is a gift. Watch, wait, and prepare. Your time isn't now, it's coming. But when it arrives, it must be precise. I smiled faintly, inwardly. The storm of shame had shifted into something sharper, focus. Power didn't need to shout. It didn't need to declare itself immediately. It needed timing, patience, and control. And I had all three. Victoria drifted past me again, laughing with Adrian, unaware that the quiet man she mocked was no longer content to remain invisible. I let my eyes follow her, noting the way she carried herself, noting the complacency that made her blind to consequences. I returned to the crowd, voice calm, posture unshakable. Everything is indeed fine, I reminded myself. Fine in appearance. Inside, the gears of strategy were turning faster than ever, each thought a thread weaving toward revelation, toward reversal, toward justice of my own design. Tonight had been the breaking point. But it was not an end, it was a beginning. My silent rebellion was no longer theoretical. It was active, deliberate, and inevitable. I glanced at Daniel once more. He gave a small, approving nod. Good. You're ready. I didn't respond aloud. Words weren't necessary yet. I had retreated inward, where plans formed and patience hardened. When the time came, there would be no mercy, no hesitation, and no doubt. And in that quiet, calculated certainty, I understood the truth: power is never given. It is claimed. I closed the door to my study and let silence envelop me. The city's hum faded into nothing, leaving only the faint ticking of the clock and my own measured breathing. I sank into the chair behind my desk, hands resting lightly on the surface, pretending once again to be the quiet, unassuming man everyone believed me to be. But inside, my mind was far from idle. Daniel, I said into the phone, my voice calm, controlled. I need your eyes on something. Observations, nothing more. No assumptions. He chuckled softly on the other end. You've changed since the other night. I saw it. The fire behind your eyes. Don't lose it by overthinking. I won't, I replied, leaning back. I'm not rushing. I need precision. Victoria's arrogance is predictable, Adrian's overconfidence equally so. But Maya, I paused, thinking carefully. Maya could be useful, if she chooses to see reality. She already suspects cracks in their facade. You're thinking too many steps ahead for them to notice, Daniel said, almost in awe. Good. Keep it that way. Observe, don't act yet. I hung up and let my mind wander over every detail I had noted in recent days. Victoria's smile, that tight-lipped curve that concealed superiority, the way she belittled my contributions in subtle tones, her reliance on Adrian's charm to reinforce her dominance. Each movement, each word, I catalogued silently, aware that they were building a pattern, a lattice I could use against them. I spoke aloud to myself, soft enough that no one could overhear, yet firm in tone. She overestimates her control. Believes I'm dependent on her. Assumes I cannot see through her manipulations. That's her mistake. Adrian was simpler to chart. His arrogance made him careless. Every flirtation, every boast about clever deals or inside connections, was a thread I could pull at the right moment. He underestimated subtlety, believing only in flashy victories, blind to the slow, deliberate patience of someone who plans for the long game. I leaned forward, tapping the desk. Every interaction is a move on their board. Every word they speak, a misstep if observed correctly. And I am watching. Patiently. Maya's role was more delicate. She was cautious, conflicted, but her conscience flickered in moments of honesty. I needed her to see that the man they both underestimated could act decisively, but only at the perfect time. I could plant hints, allow her to witness small truths, and gradually align her loyalty without forcing her hand. I stood and walked to the window, watching the streetlights flicker in the distance. My lips curved in a small, thoughtful smile. They have no idea I'm already moving. Every mistake they make, every bit of arrogance they display, is fodder for the reveal. I only need to wait, and the pieces will fall into place naturally. The telephone rang again. Daniel. I answered, voice steady. Updates. He spoke quietly, almost conspiratorially. Victoria made a comment at the board meeting. About your limitations. Not malicious, just dismissive. Adrian smirked along, naturally. But I caught it, just as you asked. It's perfect. They're reinforcing the very image you want them to believe. Good, I said, tapping a pen against my notepad. Let them continue. I will not force their hand. Their own overconfidence will be the mechanism of their downfall. I paused, letting the words hang. And Daniel, every move I make will be deliberate. No rash actions, no emotional displays. Weakness is my cloak, patience is my weapon. You're terrifyingly calm, he muttered. I am calm, I replied. Because I am prepared. They have no idea they're playing into my hands. That is the power of strategy, invisible, inexorable. I hung up and returned to my desk, opening the drawer to my collection of notes. Every meeting, every interaction, every smile or slight glance was recorded. Patterns emerged. Patterns that could be turned to advantage. Each day, each observation, was a seed sown for the ultimate revelation. Victoria's superiority, Adrian's pride, Maya's caution, they were predictable, malleable, and entirely under my consideration. I smiled faintly, a quiet satisfaction warming me. I would not need force. I would not need cruelty. Their mistakes, my patience, and my intelligence would do everything for me. And in that quiet room, with only my thoughts for company, I understood fully, the moment of revelation was coming. Not hurried, not reckless. Perfectly timed. And when it arrived, the man they never suspected would finally be seen. I watched from my corner table at the cafe, coffee cooling beside me, as Victoria laughed a little too loudly at Adrian's poorly disguised brag. Their flirtations had always been obvious, but now whispers of something darker had begun to drift toward me, rumors that made my pulse steady with quiet satisfaction rather than alarm. Maya, I said when she slid into the seat across from me, her eyes darting around the room. You look like you have something to tell me. She hesitated, fingers twisting her napkin. I shouldn't say anything. I leaned forward, voice low. You should. I trust you, Maya. And if you think someone else might hear, well, that makes it all the more important that I know first. Her gaze flicked to the window, then back to me. It's about Adrian. About Victoria. People are starting to talk, about shady deals, embezzlement, favors granted that shouldn't have been. Small things, but enough to raise questions. I let a faint, amused smile touch my lips. And you heard this from? From reliable sources. Friends in finance, employees who've seen the books, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe it myself. But, the more I see, the harder it is to ignore. I nodded slowly, keeping my tone light. Curious. And Victoria? What's her role in all this? She manipulates. Uses charm, flattery, gets people to sign off on things without them realizing it. Adrian's greed helps, but she's the architect. It's subtle, but damaging. I sipped my coffee, pretending the news was trivial, all the while filing every detail away in my mind. And these people, have they made accusations publicly? No. Yet. They're cautious. But the chatter is growing. I thought you should know, since, her voice trailed off. Since you always seem to see what's happening before anyone else does. I allowed a dry laugh. Observing comes with the territory, Maya. And patience. You know I've never rushed. She exhaled slowly, relief mingling with tension. I wanted to warn you. If you act now, it might be messy. But you've always known how to handle messes. I leaned back, watching a bus pass outside, the headlights reflecting briefly in the window. Messes are only messy if you let them be. I prefer controlled chaos. And right now, chaos is blossoming around them, whether they know it or not. Maya frowned. You're calm. Too calm. It's unnerving. Calm is necessary when the game is finally in motion, I said, voice smooth, almost casual. Every careless glance, every arrogance-fueled mistake, they're building the perfect storm. And I am at the center, collecting the pieces. Her lips pressed together. Do you really think you can? I mean, Victoria isn't just arrogant. She's ruthless. I am not rushing, I reminded her. Ruthlessness is for the unprepared. I have patience, evidence, and timing. She has pride and Adrian has greed. That is all the leverage I need. Maya shifted, uneasy. You're serious. But what if they notice you're gathering this? What if they act before you're ready? I tilted my head, considering. Then they act recklessly. And that's their mistake. The very arrogance that hides their sins will expose them. I only need to remain, unremarkable. Invisible. Until the moment arrives. Her eyes widened. So all this, you're waiting. Letting them dig their own holes. Exactly, I said, letting the words settle between us. And every rumor, every slip, every secret they think is safe, it's mine to collect. Every whisper strengthens the foundation I am building for the revelation. Maya's shoulders relaxed slightly, a faint understanding dawning. I see. You're planning quietly. Carefully. And no one suspects. Correct, I replied, voice steady, almost gentle. It is the power of patience. The power of pretending weakness while the world believes they're in control. And trust me, Maya, the moment is coming. Not hurried, not forced, perfectly timed. She nodded, the tension in her frame softening. I hope they see it coming too late. They will, I said quietly, more to myself than to her. Because they cannot see me. And they never will, until the final move is made. I watched her leave, disappearing into the crowd, and I returned to my notes, documenting everything I just heard. Every detail, every subtle hint, every careless remark Victoria and Adrian had made. I pretended ignorance in public, smiled when Victoria flattered herself, and collected all the evidence silently. A sense of calm satisfaction settled over me. The threads were in place. The stage was set. And soon, all their arrogance, greed, and manipulations would unravel exactly as I had predicted. Patience, strategy, and quiet observation had brought me this far. The revelation was near. And when it came, no one would forget it. I found Victoria in the study, sipping wine as if the day's victories were already hers. Her smile was sharp, confident, predatory even, and I allowed myself a quiet inhale before speaking. "Victoria," I said, voice casual, almost bored. "Do you remember the Parsons deal? The one Adrian insisted would be foolproof?" She looked up, brow arched. "Yes." "Why?" Her tone carried amusement, as though I were a child asking about a game she'd already won. "I was reviewing some numbers," I continued, letting my eyes linger on her expression, and noticed a few discrepancies. "Nothing alarming. I just thought you'd want to know, in case you missed it." Her laugh was soft, dismissive. "Discrepancies? You mean Adrian's little miscalculations? I'm sure he'll fix them." I nodded slowly. "Of course. I just like to double-check. You know, make sure everything is perfect." Her lips twitched. "Always the perfectionist, aren't you?" I smiled faintly, letting it appear self-deprecating. "You know me. Can't help it." She returned to her wine, unconcerned, yet I noted the slight hesitation in her posture. A crack. Small, but promising. Later, in the office, I watched Adrian fumble through his reports, overconfidence now mixing with carelessness. He didn't notice my presence, didn't even see the subtle hints I dropped in casual questions to colleagues. "Adrian, how is the Westbrook project progressing?" I asked lightly. He glanced at me, smirk in place. "Better than you'd expect. I have it all under control." I nodded. "Good, good. And the numbers from last quarter?" "Just curious." "They're fine," he said quickly, too quickly. "Absolutely fine." I leaned back, pretending to check my watch. Fine is fine. I just like to keep track of the finer details. He frowned, annoyance creeping in. "Perfect. Let him grow careless, let his arrogance blind him." Daniel called that evening, his voice low through the phone. "I saw Victoria today. She's testing limits, pushing harder. Don't engage too directly yet. Let her continue." I smirked. "Exactly as planned. She's biting at the edges, showing impatience. And Adrian's arrogance is making him sloppy. Small moves, Daniel, that's all it is." "Small moves?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Each minor slip, each moment of pride, it's accumulating. They're setting up their own downfall." The next day, I invited Maya to lunch, ostensibly to discuss business strategy. She hesitated before sitting, eyes scanning the room as though she feared eavesdroppers. "I overheard something yesterday," she began cautiously. "About Adrian and Victoria. There are people questioning their practices. Financial errors, favoritism, decisions made in secret. Nothing public, yet." I nodded, pretending curiosity. "Interesting. And you're telling me this because you can handle it. You always see things before they become problems." Her voice was quiet, almost awed. "Careful observation," I said lightly. "That's all. The world rarely shows its cards willingly." Her eyes softened. "You're calm. You always know when to act." I smiled faintly. "Patience is power, Maya. And right now, patience is the only strategy." Back at the office, Victoria's behavior grew erratic. Small, sharp remarks, clipped tones, the occasional glare when Adrian misstepped in public meetings. I observed quietly, letting her arrogance dictate her actions, letting Adrian's carelessness spiral just enough to reveal itself. Daniel's messages came in short bursts: "She's slipping. He's sloppy. Keep watching." I replied, "Not yet. Timing is everything. Let them dig the hole themselves." By midweek, the first consequences appeared. Minor miscalculations, easily fixable, yet the stress was visible. Victoria snapped at a junior associate, and Adrian argued with a supplier unnecessarily. Small explosions of tension, but telling. I approached Victoria privately that evening, a single document in hand. "Victoria, a note on the Westbrook figures. Nothing major, just something you might want to review before Adrian notices." She took it, eyes narrowing as she read. I don't understand. It seems correct." "Perhaps," I said lightly. "But numbers can deceive, and it's always safer to double-check. I know you value precision." Her hand trembled slightly as she returned it. She didn't acknowledge it, didn't thank me, just left. Another crack, larger this time. Later, Daniel met me in the quiet of my study. "You're accelerating it nicely," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. "Their mistakes are compounding." "I prefer subtlety," I replied. "Revealing too early spoils the effect. Let them think they're in control." "Control," Daniel mused. "Yes. They'll see how little of it they really have." I smiled, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Every careless glance, every arrogant claim, every manipulation they believed would succeed, they were all threads, weaving a tapestry of their eventual unraveling. That night, I returned to my study, reviewing notes, checking details, ensuring that every slip, every misstep, was documented. Victoria's arrogance, Adrian's greed, Maya's cautious loyalty, they all played roles in the design I had created. I allowed a rare moment of quiet contentment. The first strike had been made. Not overt, not dramatic, but precise. Small truths, subtle confrontations, careful observation, the beginning of their collapse. And when the final act arrived, it would be undeniable. I had been underestimated for years. Now, I controlled the tempo, the evidence, the narrative. And they were falling, blind to the strings I held. Patience, calculation, and silence were my weapons. And this was only the beginning. The room buzzed with polite chatter and clinking glasses, the kind of background noise that always made me feel invisible. Until now. Victoria stood across the room, radiant, self-assured, smirking at Adrian beside her. Both of them believed the game was still theirs to control. I approached, calm, every step measured. Adrian's smile faltered as our eyes met. "Enjoying the evening?" I asked lightly, voice even. Adrian chuckled nervously. "Of course. Everything's perfect. Isn't it, Victoria?" Victoria's smile widened, but there was a flicker of doubt. "Absolutely." "Why?" "Because," I said, letting my hand rest casually on the table, "I reviewed the Westbrook project reports this morning. Some inconsistencies caught my eye. Nothing catastrophic, of course, but interesting." Victoria tilted her head. "Interesting? I'm not sure I follow." I let a faint, deliberate pause hang in the air. Interesting that what Adrian considered minor errors could have led to serious losses. And yet, I see the project is still intact. Curious, isn't it, how careful oversight changes outcomes? Adrian's jaw tightened. We handled everything properly." "You've misread something." I shook my head slowly. "No, Adrian. I've read everything thoroughly. The errors, the manipulations, the hidden profits you siphoned, all accounted for. The investors are aware. I've ensured transparency. Victoria gasped, and I caught the moment her confident mask slipped. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching her clutch. "You, what?" she stammered. "How?" I let a calm smile touch my lips. "You believed I was meek, that I'd never notice. You underestimated my patience. You overestimated your own cleverness." Her knees buckled almost imperceptibly. I leaned slightly closer, voice crisp and controlled. "I am no longer the man you dismissed, Victoria. And Adrian, your greed, it's very obvious now, isn't it?" Adrian opened his mouth, but I raised a finger, stopping him. "Save it. Every transaction, every decision outside my oversight, documented. Every careless word you spoke in my presence, every private whisper caught." The pattern was clear, predictable even. Victoria sank fully to her knees, her face pale. I didn't think." "I know," I said softly. "You never do. That's why patience works so well. You construct illusions of control, and I simply wait, observe, and let reality unfold. Today, reality is clear." She looked up at me, tears glinting in her eyes, but her pride still struggled to speak. "You, all these years, you were, hiding." "Yes," I interrupted gently, "hiding strength, strategy, patience. Hiding a mind that never underestimated you, never overlooked your deceit. I let you feel powerful, and you believed it." Adrian's face twisted in anger and panic. You can't do this." I've worked hard." "Hard work does not excuse betrayal," I said, tone even but final. "Every unethical act, every lie, every manipulation, exposed. Contracts amended, investors informed, everything accounted for." Victoria sobbed quietly, shaking her head. I thought. "You thought I would remain silent forever," I said, voice low and controlled. "But patience has a limit, and your arrogance reached it." Daniel's subtle nod from across the room reminded me how far this had all been calculated. Maya, watching quietly, gave a small, approving smile, understanding the precision of the moment. I straightened fully, projecting calm dominance. Power is not always shown in noise and fury. Sometimes, it is quiet. Invisible. But undeniable when revealed. Victoria's eyes widened further, disbelief and fear mingling. I never imagined." "Exactly," I said. "You never imagined that I could see through your games. That I could anticipate every move, every deceit. And now, the consequences are yours to face." Adrian's hands clenched, the first real sign of panic breaking through his polished exterior. You're ruining us." "No," I said, voice steady, unwavering. "You ruined yourselves. I merely waited for the moment the truth would stand on its own. Consider this, poetic justice." The room had fallen silent, all attention drawn to the confrontation. Colleagues stared, murmurs of shock spreading. Victoria's pride was shattered, Adrian's composure in ruins, and I remained calm, unshaken, finally revealed. I allowed a final glance at them, the depth of my hidden power apparent, and stepped back. "Patience, observation, strategy," I murmured to myself. "Sometimes, that is enough." Victoria remained kneeling, Adrian frozen, and the world around me felt impossibly still. Every insult endured, every slight tolerated, had led to this moment. No theatrics, no cruelty, just quiet, undeniable control. And in that silence, I knew, the power shift was complete. I watched from the corner of the room, silent, as the murmurs swelled. Victoria tried to smile, but it was brittle, forced. Even her closest friends no longer masked their discomfort. "Victoria, is everything all right?" a colleague asked cautiously, voice low. She swallowed hard, nodding, though her eyes flicked toward me, desperate for some illusion of control. Yes, just a minor misunderstanding." A laugh echoed, sharp, disbelief-laden, from across the room. Adrian, standing nearby, had a grim expression. Minor misunderstanding, someone challenged. Your last project cost the company millions. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. It's complicated. Complicated? I interjected smoothly, stepping forward. Not at all. It was predictable. Patterns, decisions, and overconfidence, easily anticipated. The truth doesn't need complexity. She froze, color draining from her face. You made all this public. I met her gaze evenly. It wasn't me. It was everything you and Adrian allowed to accumulate. Your errors, your greed, your arrogance, they revealed themselves. Adrian stammered. I didn't. No excuses, I said softly, letting my words settle like stones. Everything unfolds eventually, whether by design or carelessness. Karma doesn't wait. Murmurs grew louder. Colleagues who once whispered behind their backs now openly questioned them. Contracts were rescinded, invitations withdrawn, and reputation, Victoria's carefully curated social image, crumbled in real time. She can't be serious, Victoria muttered to no one, glancing around for support. None came. Maya appeared beside me, quiet, observant. You handled this, perfectly, she whispered. I allowed a small nod, grateful for her presence. Patience works better than rage, I said. Let them dismantle themselves. Victoria's knees buckled slightly under the weight of whispers and judgment. I don't understand. You've always underestimated others, I cut in gently. And you mistook tolerance for weakness. That's the mistake every arrogant person makes. Adrian's hands trembled. You're destroying everything I built. Everything you built on deception? I asked. Hard work does not excuse betrayal. Every shortcut, every lie, has consequences. And today, those consequences speak for themselves. Victoria's voice cracked. I never imagined. You imagined you could control everyone, I replied. But control is earned, not taken. And arrogance cannot hide errors forever. A few of their former allies murmured, glances exchanged. Slowly, one by one, they began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with disgrace. Maya's subtle nod confirmed she had already taken her decision, she would align with integrity, not arrogance. I leaned back slightly, observing quietly. No triumph in my eyes, only measured calm. It's fascinating, I murmured to Maya, how fragile perception is. Build a tower on pride, and the smallest crack brings collapse. Victoria's voice was barely audible now. I can fix this. You can't fix what's gone, I said simply. Reputation lost, alliances broken, trust destroyed. Actions have consequences beyond intentions. Adrian slumped into a chair, his composure shattered. This can't be happening. It is happening, I said, voice soft but absolute. And it will continue to happen unless one learns humility. But learning is often too late for the arrogant. The room had grown quiet. Colleagues watched me with newfound respect, the quiet power I had always masked now fully apparent. Victoria and Adrian, once untouchable in their arrogance, stood exposed, powerless, invisible in a world that now recognized truth over pretense. Maya gave a faint, approving smile. You've truly changed the dynamics, without cruelty, without noise. I exhaled softly, letting the tension dissipate. Justice rarely requires force. It merely waits for the moment the guilty reveal themselves. Victoria's gaze fell to the floor. Adrian avoided my eyes completely. Both were shadows of the people who once dominated rooms with confidence. Karma, I realized, had a quiet, poetic rhythm. No gloating. No celebration. Just the hollow satisfaction that comes from watching integrity endure while arrogance collapses. I straightened, glancing at Maya. Now, we move forward. The past has spoken for itself. Our focus must be what comes next. She nodded. And the world sees who truly matters. Yes, I said softly, almost to myself. Patience, strategy, observation, power revealed without chaos. Sometimes that is the strongest victory of all. The betrayers faded from the room, unnoticed, their arrogance leaving behind only echoes. I remained, silent, steady, finally unshaken by their fall. I sank into my chair, the office quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Papers were neatly stacked, evidence of meticulous control over work, over life, over everything that mattered. For years, I had let the world see only a shadow of myself, a man who seemed timid, easily overlooked. The irony now made me smile faintly. Thinking deep thoughts again. Daniel's voice broke the silence, warm and familiar. He stepped in, carrying 2 glasses of something amber-colored. I suppose you could say that, I replied, meeting his eyes. I've been replaying every choice, every moment that led here. He placed a glass on the desk. And what have you decided? I picked it up, feeling the smooth weight in my hand. That patience was stronger than anger. Strategy stronger than haste. And survival, well, survival required silence more than noise. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Silence suits you, but it hides storms. I chuckled softly. Storms are overrated. Quiet power, deliberate, controlled, is what brings freedom. I clinked my glass against his. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, he echoed, his smile genuine. I leaned back, eyes drifting to the window. Sunlight caught the edge of the blinds, creating a pattern of lines across the floor. You know, it wasn't only Victoria or Adrian who taught me lessons. Betrayal isn't just an event, it's a mirror. It reflects weakness, exposes gaps, and tests limits. I survived by learning when to act and when to wait. Daniel nodded. You learned well. Most would have lost themselves in anger or pride. I had my moments, I admitted, a faint grin crossing my face. But I learned to channel them. To observe, to document, to let their arrogance work against them. Every lie, every misstep, every careless glance, they all became pieces of the puzzle. He chuckled softly. And now the puzzle is complete. I sipped my drink, savoring the warmth. Complete, yes. But the goal was never vengeance. That's the trap. Real victory isn't in seeing them fall, it's in not falling yourself. I kept my integrity, my focus, my vision intact. That is the true strength. Daniel's eyes studied me, thoughtful. You've changed everything without cruelty. That's rare. Control doesn't require cruelty, I said. It requires clarity. Discipline. Patience. I didn't need to yell, to humiliate, to rush. The world revealed their flaws on its own. I merely observed. A silence settled between us, comfortable, reflective. My mind wandered to the years I had hidden my intelligence, my ambitions. To the countless dismissive smiles from Victoria, the careless arrogance of Adrian, the whispers behind closed doors. Every moment had been a test. Every slight a reminder that the mask must remain, until the moment was right. And Maya? Daniel asked gently. She stayed true, I said. She chose integrity over loyalty to the reckless. Her presence is a reminder that not everyone bends under deception. Allies matter, but so does discernment. She will be trusted, and wisely so. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Do you remember how small it felt at first? Pretending to be weak, enduring ridicule, letting them believe they controlled me? Daniel nodded. I do. And I saw it, you never lost yourself, not really. No, I said softly. I observed, I calculated. I endured. Not for revenge, but for liberation. Each slight, each mockery, was a lesson in patience, a rehearsal for the moment when the truth of my power could finally be revealed. I paused, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. And when it came, it wasn't a scream. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet, deliberate, complete. Victoria, Adrian, they learned too late that control cannot be feigned without consequences. Daniel smiled. And you? I learned that freedom doesn't come from destroying others. It comes from mastering oneself. From understanding the strength in silence, the power in patience, the liberation in self-control. That is what this journey has taught me. He lifted his glass again. To the man you were, and the man you became. To the man I became, I repeated, clinking our glasses. The sound echoed softly in the room, a final punctuation on years of calculated endurance. I set my glass down, looking out the window. The sun was higher now, bathing the office in light. Shadows no longer lingered. My past, with all its deception and betrayal, had shaped me, refined me, prepared me. But it no longer held me captive. I was free. Not because others had fallen, but because I had risen. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself a quiet, unguarded smile. The journey was complete, not in triumph over others, but in the mastery of myself. I watched the sunlight spill across the cafe table, warming the cup in my hands. It was quiet here, no interruptions, no scrutiny, no lingering shadows of the past. Only the steady rhythm of the present. You seem lighter, Maya said, studying me across the table. Her tone was soft, curious, not questioning but reflective. I am, I replied, letting a small smile slip. Months have passed. The chaos has faded. People like Victoria and Adrian no longer occupy my space, they're irrelevant, invisible even. Maya nodded. I never imagined you'd come out like this, calm, composed, unshakable. Calm is earned, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. Not given. It comes from observation, patience, and knowing when to act. I learned that long ago. She tilted her head. And yet, you never sought revenge. You didn't humiliate them, didn't gloat. That's the point, I said, leaning back slightly. Control isn't measured by the downfall of others. It's measured by the mastery of yourself. I survived, I endured, I observed, and I acted only when necessary. Karma handled the rest. Maya's eyes flickered with admiration. I wish more people understood that. I shrugged lightly. Most don't. They rush, they lash out, they let anger dictate action. But power, the quiet kind, is patient. Invisible until undeniable. That's how I rebuilt everything, career, social standing, life itself. One calculated step at a time. She sipped her coffee, thoughtful. And you're happy? I paused, letting the question linger. Happiness isn't the right word. It's satisfaction. A deep, quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you survived every test without losing yourself. That you moved through betrayal, deception, and arrogance without being consumed by them. Maya smiled faintly. You've changed. But I think this version of you is stronger than I imagined. Strength isn't always visible, I said. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. True strength waits, watches, and only reveals itself when necessary. Victoria and Adrian. They overestimated themselves. That was their mistake, not mine. She glanced around the cafe, then back at me. So, what now? I set down my cup. Now, life continues. I focus on meaningful work, trustworthy alliances, and self-growth. The past has its lessons, and I carry them quietly. But it doesn't define me. I define myself. Her expression softened. I'm glad I can be part of your world now. You've earned that, I said sincerely. Trust is rare, but vital. I value it deeply. A comfortable silence settled between us, filled not with tension, but with understanding. The air was different now, lighter, freer. Shadows had lifted. You know, Maya said after a pause, there's something poetic about all of this. How everything fell into place without you needing to make a scene. I smiled, nodding. Yes. The world reveals arrogance on its own. You don't need to force lessons. You only need to endure and act deliberately when the moment is truly right. Maya's smile widened. I hope you know how rare this is. Most would have crumbled, or exploded. I know, I replied. That's why I stayed quiet. Every glance, every remark, every calculated step, everything mattered. And now, months later, the outcome is serenity. Control without chaos. I glanced out the window, watching people pass by, each absorbed in their own worlds. Life is still moving, I said softly. And I move with it. Observing, learning, acting when necessary. Always prepared, always aware. But never again trapped by others' arrogance or deceit. Maya reached over, touching my hand lightly. I'm proud of you. I returned her gesture with a nod, a quiet acknowledgement. Thank you. For seeing what mattered, and for choosing integrity. That makes you invaluable. We sat together in silence, letting the moment linger. The world continued, but I was steady now, calm, deliberate, and free. Shadows of betrayal had vanished. Power had returned, not as spectacle, but as quiet, enduring presence. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. I was enough. I was in control. I was free.